Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I could not be more delighted to have this opportunity to interview entrepreneur and author Jarie Bolander, who has written a raw and heartfelt book titled Ride or Die, Loving Through Tragedy, a Husband's Memoir. In Ride or Die, Jarie recounts the wondrous ways his wife Jane handled her terminal illness, explores the male experience of grief in the hopes that others also suffering through grief will not feel so alone. And he provides a frank chronicle of how an intimate relationship can change and grow, even when the people involved feel there is nothing left to give. In addition to being an author, Jarie is a dynamic entrepreneur. He holds an MBA in technology management from the University of Phoenix and a BS in electrical engineering from San Jose State University. After he graduated from San Jose State University, he caught the entrepreneurial startup bug, and Jarie now has 6 startups, more than 7 books, and 10 patents to his credit. This is a busy guy. His experience runs the gamut, from semiconductors to life sciences to nonprofits. He hosts a podcast called The Entrepreneur Ethos, and that podcast is based on his last book by that same name. Jarie will be speaking to us today from San Francisco, where he works as the head of market strategy for Decision Counsel, a business-to-business growth consulting firm. I'm looking forward to talking with him about the courage with which his wife Jane faced cancer and her own death, the male perspective on grief and loss, his belief that it is important to build up resilience to difficult times before they happen, why healing should be thought of as a way of life rather than as an end state, and so much more for what is going to be an inspiring, wise, and very touching interview. Hey, Jarie, a warm welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Well, thank you so much for that warm and beautiful introduction, Irene. I mean, wow, how can I live up to that?
Well, you're living up to it. That's all of who you are.
Yeah, well, appreciate that.
You're an amazing guy.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, you live a life and you try to do the best you can. And sometimes you got to zig and zag and things happen. And, my whole philosophy has always been like, if you go through something challenging, you battle the dragon, you come back with the gold, that you should share, and you should really be open to that. And that's why I really appreciate what you're doing. This is just such a fantastic podcast. These are conversations that mean so much to so many people. I just applaud you for the hard work on this.
Thank you for that validation. I'm very humbled by what's going on with this podcast and how it's helping so many people. Yeah. So let's start by getting them to know who the little Jarie was that formed all these gifts that you've been using, which led to your love of helping entrepreneurs and also prepared you to meet some of these amazing challenges that we're going to talk about that you had in your life.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a town called Belmont, California, which is a suburb of San Francisco, about 25 miles south of San Francisco. My parents still live there, still live in the family house. Grew up in the 70s and 80s, which makes me a Gen X kid. So latchkey kid, we fondly say we equally think boomers and millennials are just a bunch of knuckleheads. So they get that kind of attitude.
You're talking to a knucklehead.
I know. Well, I mean, we're all knuckleheads that way, right? So, Belmont was a suburb on the peninsula back in the 80s, especially in California. There had actually been a rash of serial killers in California, and my town, October 1984, was a very bad time for Belmont. The beginning of that month, my friend Lance Turner was murdered behind our middle school, and no one knew who killed him. It was just this really shock and awe to this whole thing. And then towards the end of that month, one of the guys I delivered papers to, this guy, Robert Walker Black, was arrested for killing his mom and his uncle and burying them underneath the crawl space. So for the better part of 3 years, I'd been delivering papers to this guy, not knowing that 25 feet away from me were these two dead people. So it was a traumatic childhood in that sense. It wasn't that we didn't feel safe, but you just didn't feel like anyone had your back. I mean, you were like on your own. No ands, ifs, or buts about it.
No community support. No one was gathering together.
Yeah,
watch each other or help each other in some way.
Yeah, but not as much as you would think. I mean, the kids, we would all like ride bikes, and so we all had our little group. But this was about the time when parents started to have to both work. My mom and dad both worked. The support was not. I mean, physically was there, emotionally not so much.
Emotionally not, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, which is again in the 70s and 80s, that was a very common trait, especially. My parents were the lost generation, or the before World War II. And so there was just all this generational trauma, right? That trying to figure this all out. And it's not to say that they weren't great parents, but we were self-sufficient at a very early age. I mean, I remember, at 10, I'd take care of my two brothers.
Wow.
Like, my job, like, and from 10 until I was in high school.
Wow.
And then, I had a paper route when I was 10 or 11.
Did you just accept it, or did you resent that? And did your brothers resent you?
They did a little bit.
You were like,
yeah, the big brother. I wasn't the nicest big brother all the time either. So I was one of those guys too. Yeah, I think it was just abundantly clear from an early age that you needed to work hard and you needed to take care of yourself. And the cavalry was not coming. And that may have just been our family. That may have just been my attitude. But my entire life is like, you need to figure this out on your own. And that's both a blessing and a curse, right? Because there's a certain amount of resiliency in that. There's a certain amount of self-sufficiency, but there's also a lot of loneliness. And there's a lot of just angst about your place in the world. So as a kid, I was always anxious to just grow up. I got to get to the next level. So a lot of fear. I was just driven by a lot of fear. And I think the environment we were in, even in the suburbs, even with all these things, you just realized the world was a scary place, no matter where you were. And you had to watch your back. We worked a lot. My dad really loved working around the house. So from an early age, we would be digging ditches and.
Well, you have lots of responsibilities there.
Yeah, very early.
First of all, I want to ask you, did they ever find out who murdered your friend?
They did. They did.
What about another fellow?
Yeah, 30 years later, he was known as the Peninsula serial killer. A guy named Dunkel. He'd actually killed 3 young boys.
Wow.
And what was weird about that is I actually think I met this Dunkel kid at one point. We were playing around at some school, and I remember this guy just like looked odd. I mean, he was 10 years older than us. It's just weird, just bizarre. And I'm like, oh, I gotta stay away from that. You could feel the there's not something not right with this guy. And
Or as Saul used to say to me, he's got a screw loose. Sometimes you like really perceive that something's really not right about someone.
yeah, yeah, it was in the eyes. It was in his eyes. Like he just looked like he wanted to consume you. It's
Oh,
just the weirdest, like, get the hell away. I mean, you know, when they say trust your gut, when you see something like that, you're like, get the hell away from here.
oh,
So
your poor friend. Oh my
yeah, I
goodness.
mean, he was horrible. You
Horrible.
know, his father found him. I mean,
Oh, oh, oh,
yeah,
oh, oh,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
oh. So how did this love that you have of helping entrepreneurs blossom? Did it blossom during your childhood? Or
Mm,
I understand how you were already getting ready to meet challenges of life, but this thing that you do, nurturing and empowering entrepreneurs, did that start early on with your newspaper route?
Um, I mean, there was always a desire to like achieve, right? Um, and be self-sufficient. I didn't really understand the startups thing until I was in college. You know, I went to school in Silicon Valley. Like, why would I not go to a startup? Like, they're everywhere. Like, you can't throw a rock outside of San Jose State and not hit
No.
a startup, right? And so
Well,
I
that's an
just,
interesting life path, though. So, because a lot of kids go into the company, the corporation, or the whatever, and you were more into self-generating, right?
yeah,
Yeah, through
and
businesses and all.
yeah, and I just like to create. Like, I love to build things. So and and the other thing I realized is that I'm unmanageable. So I'm really like I need to. I like oh
You know
I,
what?
you know.
You're your own boss. You don't want to report to a boss, right?
Well, yeah, it's funny because I am obviously a good team player and I'm not that much of a a-hole, but you can just feel the like, why am I doing it this way when I think I should be doing it that way? So I just had this sense that I had to build stuff and I had to do it on my own, and I really wanted to be part of something. And you know, startups, especially in Silicon Valley in the '90s, which is when I was coming up, was all about semiconductors. So I went to a bunch of semiconductor startups. I did chip design, like all these things because I had an electrical engineering degree. And you
You were
just,
born with a lot of gifts.
I know.
You really nurtured a lot of gifts within yourself with very little guidance and support
Yeah.
as to who you were.
My dad was pretty good about like he was electrical engineer too, so we would build computers and electronics. So I had sort of had the bug deep in me, right? Like it was almost a foregone conclusion that I was going to be an engineer. Just what kind, right? But you know, all that kind of really, you know, all that startup experience just kind of solidified in my brain that you know the opportunity is out there, and it's really your attitude about the opportunity, right? And that has sort of followed me through all the stuff I've gone through in life. So I just really have a more entrepreneurial spirit about how I run my life. To
Yeah,
me, you know,
go
to
ahead.
me, like when someone says, you know, hey, that's a stupid idea, where do I sign up? That's me. Like I was like, let's go. You know, it's like
I love that.
I'm willing to you know, I'm willing to try it because I'm like know how important and how random things can be. It's like, who knows, you know?
You know what's special about that? Because you grew up with a lot of fear, but you
Yeah.
moved through your fear. You've learned how to you meet the challenge, you move through your fear. So speaking of all of that, let's get to Jane
Mm.
and talk about Jane and your relationship with her, what it was like. And I am in awe, and I think everyone in the world should do this. What motivated the two of you to meet with a therapist 6 months into your relationship? If people did that, so many divorces would be avoided, I think. You know, how did that work for you guys?
Um, well, I was married before and got divorced, and Jane, let's just say, was a little upset that I was married before.
She was jealous.
Well, I think not jealous per se. She just said, "Well, you're my soulmate. How can you have been with someone else?" And I'm like, how is this my fault? Like literally, right? Like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that my wife and I, my ex-wife and I broke. What do you want me to do? Like,
She warmed me up for you. Don't complain.
exactly. At least I've been trained, at least somewhat, right? Um, so what had happened was she was very adamant about, I want kids. If you don't want kids, let's just end our relationship now. And I'm like, look, I am uncertain about whether or not I want to have kids. It's not that I don't want them. It's not that I don't love kids. It's my childhood did not prepare me to be that, right? I'm like, I did not have a fun childhood. It wasn't something that I would want anyone else to have to deal with. And it's not to say that it was bad or we got, there was challenges and struggles like anything, but I generally didn't have a great childhood.
And you didn't have an experience of joy growing up with your family
Yeah,
that way.
right. There's a lot
It
of
was
fear.
okay, but it wasn't like uplifting.
Yeah, no, it
Yeah.
wasn't. There was always a scarcity mindset. There's always fear. That drove me throughout my teen years. I mean, I just drank a lot of alcohol. Like I
Mm.
just was
Wow.
functional alcoholic in high school. Like
Wow.
I started young. I started like 14, 15,
Wow.
and did a lot of stupid, idiotic, dumb things that I regret and I wish I never did. And it was all my fear and the alcohol and just trying to find my place in the world. And I was lost, to be
If you
honest.
didn't, I always tell people, if you didn't have those experiences, though, you wouldn't be wise now to help other people who are going through so much. I mean, I feel that way about myself. If I didn't have the tough times I've gone through, I wouldn't be attracted to trying to help other people make it easier for them than it
Yeah.
was for me.
Yeah.
So tell
Yeah.
me, what did this therapist help you do? Like, how did she prepare you? Because that translated further on into how you handled things when they got really,
Right.
it
Right.
set a
Right.
tone for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the things that Jane didn't like about me was that I wasn't very talkative. I'm like a highly functional introvert. So people I don't get energy from people. I get energy from being alone. I mean,
Right.
like there's a limit and I just fall off the cliff, blah, right? So I wouldn't talk to her a lot. Um, and not that I didn't want to, I was just exhausted. The day just exhausted me. So she was be getting upset and why don't you talk to me? And I'm like, look, I tell you, like, this is how I am. I think we should go to therapy just so we can start on the right foot and we can get some
So
of these things
smart.
out there. Right. So she's like, yeah, okay, whatever, we'll do it. Right. And first day of therapy, I can remember this like it was yesterday. Sat down and she's like, why are you here? And first thing Jane says is, Jarie won't talk to me. He doesn't share his thoughts. He's been married to, like, all these things that are like my fault. And I'm just sitting there going, oh man, like this is not going to end well. And then she's like, well, Jarie, why are you here? And I said, well, I've been married before. I had a okay experience. I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't treat my wife at the time, Margaret, very well in terms of building a relationship because I was focused on, making money and working and all the stupid stuff you do as a young person. And I just want to start off on a good footing. I want to get all the stuff out that needs to get out. And I want to make sure that, we can work through some of these substantial issues, including having kids, why, I can't believe you were married before. How come you didn't have kids with your first wife? Just all these things. You're like, I can't answer these questions, right? So we did about 4 or 5 therapy sessions. And there were times where we would leave therapy extremely pissed off at each other. um, I mean, like yelling at each other in one sense.
But it's
But
amazing that through all this you kept connected. Yeah, you never walked out and said, I'm done.
no, no, because I mean, I think the really good thing about Jane was that she saw the inherent good in people. Um, and she saw the inherent good in me that I was trying. I didn't want to. I wasn't hiding anything. Like I'm a pretty open book that way. And so, yeah, it was painful. but we got to the point where we're like, okay, I guess we're going to be together.
Well, it sounds like the therapist moves you towards more accepting each of your different styles and not judging them. Would I be right about that? Maybe where
Yes.
Jane was more judging the fact that you were not, that you were in her mind withholding, now it moved towards accepting that this is just part of who you are and how to work with that. And probably vice versa. It sounds like you were married to the quintessential extrovert who
Yeah.
who couldn't understand your style, and then you had to kind of accept hers also, right?
Yeah. There was a reconciliation of different styles. Now, had to work on the whole idea of saving some energy, saving, because she really loved it. Like literally, what would happen was we'd be in bed, we'd be reading, and I'm literally about to nod off. Like I just am exhausted. And then she'd start talking. And I'm like, like you're killing me here, right? Because I'm just going to be incoherent, right? So I learned to like start the conversation before I started to go to sleep and just, be, I don't know, be more, I mean, it was more present, which I still have a hard time being. Like I'm always in my head. I'm always like, what's the next thing? Like I'm always, kind of afraid that I'm not going to get to the next, it's a classic driven type A driven, but like afraid of what's going to happen. And I think she sort of realized that, and then we sort of worked through, okay, well,
I think that's wonderful. I love that you
yeah.
two did that together, because how long were you married when the two of you found out that Jane had leukemia? And what were your different reactions to that diagnosis? Now that we've all established your different styles of being,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
what happened there? I mean, that's so
We
tragic.
yeah, we were married a little over a year when she got
Oh my
diagnosed.
God.
And so we were newlyweds,
Oh
right?
my God. Oh
Um
wow.
we we found out she had leukemia because she had a bunch of miscarriages in a row. And it was actually December 26th, 2015 that we went to the emergency room and they're like, yeah, we think you have leukemia. Pretty shocking. I mean, there's all sorts, it's like, when they say when your life changes in an instant and they're like, how could that be? Literally the 25th, things were normal. The 26th, the world literally changed. Like
Upside down.
upside down, all bets are off. What the hell now? Over, right? And I remember being at the hospital. We're in the ER, and I'm, in this, orange plastic chair, sitting next to her, holding her hand, and they're like, we're in this ER, and we got like the
And your
curtains
kids,
around
right?
us.
You're your 30s, right?
I was 40, 43. She was 33, roughly. And I just sit there and I'm like, the hell are we doing here? And then I remember like it was yesterday, these two doctors, very nice doctors, they're like, hey, look, we need to keep you overnight. We need to get the oncologist in here. We think you may have leukemia, so we need to do something about it. And we're like, leukemia? What the WTF? Right?
Right,
Like,
right. So
and
how did so you had this solid foundation of understanding that you had built in couples therapy. So it with the WTF, how did each one of you handle that? I mean, wow.
well, yeah. Well, thankfully, we were both doers and both like to organize and get stuff done.
So now
Jane would
you had a
always,
new goal.
yeah. Jane would always like to check things off the list. That was her big thing. She had like lists of everything, right? So after the initial shock of and denial, honestly, I remember I'm sitting outside. It's a really cold December for San Francisco. We're up in San Francisco. I'm like staring at my phone. Like I got to call her dad. Like I have to. She's like, go call my parents and have them come over here. And I'm like, I don't know what to say.
And
Like
you
I'm
hardly
just
even really know them all that well. I mean, you're newlywed. How long have you
yeah,
really
yeah,
had a relationship with these people?
yeah. I mean, they accepted me as their son-in-law, but like I'm
Yeah,
still I'm probably still in the probationary stage, right?
right. Sure.
Right. So I'm just sitting there and I'm like staring at the phone, like I don't know what to. I don't know what to say. And I just sat there. I must have been a good 5 minutes before I said, okay, well, look, you got to put the wheels in motion. What do you have to do is you got to prioritize and execute what we have to do now. And what we have to do now is get her family here. Once they're here, then we can figure out what the hell to do. And then that was just this entire 15-month tsunami of activity, ups and I mean, just everything you can imagine emotionally was you going through. And
so for a guy who really wasn't out there with his emotions, all of a sudden now you're getting acquainted with all of them, right?
Yeah, all at the same time. And it's not that I wasn't emotional. Like I'm a pretty softy. Like I cry at movies, and I have I have an emotional side to me, but I'm not used to showing it when stuff needs to get done. So my general attitude is we can feel the emotions later. Let's get action going, which meant calling her friends, which meant calling the doctor. I mean, it was just like full-time job to get all that squared away, right? And just being a caregiver is.
And you had to run her business also, right?
Yeah.
And then you also established this care circle.
Yeah. So as soon as she realized she had to go into leukemia, or into chemo, we had this conversation where she's like, look, you need to run my business. And I have no clue how to run a PR and marketing company. I'm an engineer. I was running a digital health company. I was the COO of a digital health company. Like, I have no clue what the hell I'm doing. She's like, look, the only thing that's paying us right now is my company. The only way you're going to be able to take care of me is if you run my company, because it's flexible. You have to put your other thing on hold, and you just have to. She literally said, suck it up, buttercup, and get to work. Like, that's what she said, right? It's like, suck it up, buttercup.
She was a toughie.
She was driven and passionate and kind and considerate. Just a wonderful woman. That's missed every day. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And what she taught me about how to love and what love really means, and which is why I wrote the book, is just a testament to her energy. I mean, just just the fact that she's just like, well, you can do it because you have to do it. So stop. Don't wallow in your private pity party there, buddy. Suck it up and let's go. And so that's what we did. And through all the ups and downs, through all the challenges and struggles, through all the insurmountable, the thing I really was the gift from her, which, I mean, I hope when my time comes that I'm this composed, is that she really cared about how I was doing too.
Wow.
And it is so easy to lose yourself in being a caregiver. It's so easy to not take care of yourself. I mean, I did all the stupid things. I drank too much. I smoked too much pot. I ate too much garbage. There were days where I'm like, I need 5 minutes to feel something other than the dread I feel. And the only way I'm going to feel that is if I suck on this vape pen and literally for 5 minutes just lose my mind. Because it just, how are you supposed to deal with the shit show that's cancer?
Unbelievable.
I know, right?
Unbelievable. Were you also in therapy as you were going through this with her?
No, I wasn't. I wish I had been in therapy during this. I literally, the day she died, I called up my old therapist when I got divorced from Margaret. And I'm like, my wife just died. I need to do double sessions and he's like, okay, let's go. Sell them the next day.
Which is probably part of what makes you so wise to help other people now that you're a grief coach. There are probably things that you learned that you are able to apply now to help other people, I would assume.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, everyone's journey is different, right? Like there's never a one size fits all. But there's rhythm to it. There's rhyming. There's there's like a general way the world goes, right? And you can feel this, right? When you are going through grief and sorrow and trauma, you just feel it all over your body. Like you just know something's not right. And when you're in the acute stage of it, really you just need the basic, like, I need to eat, I need to shower, like I just need to get through the day till I'm at the point where I can actually process it. And for a man, it's a little bit different because, you know, I'm the captain of Team Jane. My job's to get her better. That sounds old fashioned. That sounds like, who are you? I'm like, no, I'm her husband. My job to make her better. And you know what? If it was reversed, she'd be doing the exact same thing for me. That's ride or die, right? Like, there's
Right.
no doubt in my mind she would be doing exactly the same thing I'm doing. But you just feel this overwhelming sense of almost like it's out of control. It's controlled chaos. You literally can't do anything about it other than try to make, I mean, I would just be like, okay, what do I have to get done today? Like, I'm not even going to think about tomorrow. Like, what do I got to get done today?
And
And
I'll bet you
sometimes,
did you feel guilty about taking care of yourself sometimes? Like
oh,
you couldn't fit
100%,
yourself in?
100%, 100%. You kidding me? She even like forced me sometimes to just, hey, go out with your friends, go work out. You know, one time she bought me a trip to New York City to go to a conference. She's like, you gotta, and this is during some pretty tough times where she's not feeling well. You know, she's thinks she doesn't know if she's going to make it or not. You know, thankfully we had her family who were local. They were wonderful. The care circle was about 120 people on
Wow.
a Google,
Wow.
yeah, Google email group
Wow.
where we would just talk about what was going on. One of the things I
Jarie,
realized,
that's a very wonderful strategy that you probably I would imagine you teach people, but that's a wonderful strategy because I felt the same way when I went through everyone who listens to this podcast knows I went through a terrible time when Saul died and I had 4 surgeries and all that. And I learned I called it you called the care circle, I called it my wagon train. And I
yeah.
had certain people who did nobody could do everything, but
Mhm.
people kind of were there in my life to help me in different ways. And oh, it made such a difference. So that must have been very helpful to you.
Yeah, it was. My friend Troy turned me on to it. And one of the reasons I found out really quickly um, is that I was calling people constantly. Like, everyone wanted to know what was going on. And I'm like, I can't sustain this. So I decided, look, I'm going to build this care circle. We are going to give periodic updates. We're going to send an email out. And it's going to help me. And what it did was it helped me organize my thoughts. It also helped me ask for help, which is hard for me to do.
Quite a lesson.
Yeah. And it felt there was community. You didn't feel so alone, although you sort of in it, you feel isolated. But at least there was some, like in the book, if there you'll see some of the actual care circle emails in the book,
Yeah,
because
I remember that.
I really wanted people to be like, this is what it was like in that moment. And then you read the email and then you read the chapter, which is what was actually going on behind the scenes. So you
Right.
see that there's a filter, like there is definitely a filter that we were trying to make sure that we were at least saying as positive as we could,
Mhm.
but,
Well, you had a social worker
mm,
named Patty who was a pivotal part of how you dealt with your inner conflict.
mhm,
And I think it's so important that people know that you were feeling cheated out of your own life when
yeah.
she might die. So that, of course, produced guilt and all kinds of feelings for you and conflict. What did Patty say to you? What was her? Could you set up how she came in? It's a beautiful part of your book. How she came in, how she helped you, um, how she responded to your question. How am I supposed to deal with her talking about if she dies? What did Patty? What was her wise guidance?
um well, what was interesting is that Jane wasn't very into social workers. She actually kicked a bunch of them out when she was in chemo because I don't think she just wanted to deal with, like, I don't want to talk about this stuff. But we were down at the Santa Clara Kaiser, and she was on her fourth round of chemo. I don't remember. And it it was getting a more and more clear that this may not end well. And we were trying to figure out how to sort that out. And before Patty knocked on the door, we were fighting about, hey, stop saying you're going to die. I don't want to hear that. You're going to make it. Shut up. Don't have the negative attitude. And she's just like, what happens if I don't? You're going to be miserable. You're going to do what I always do. You're just going to be this mope around. Like she was going with like, she'd say, she'd call me all these names. And one of them was Town's frown, because I was like always frowning, right? Because I bias negative, right? I'm trying to not bias negative, but I generally bias negative. She's like, yeah, Town's frown. All you do is frown around all the time. And I'm like, the hell are you talking about? Like, so we're fighting, and this knocks on the door, and I'm like, who the hell is it? It's like 5:30 in the afternoon. I'm exhausted. I do not want to deal with any of this. What the hell could it be now? And Patty walks in, and Patty was a social worker.
An older woman?
Older woman. I don't know how old she was, but you just tell she just had this motherly, grandmotherly presence. Like you just could feel like I could tell you anything and you will not judge me, which is really important, because now that I think about it, as we were yelling at each other, right? I'm getting a little choked up about it, because the pivotal point in it was Patty made me recognize that it was okay for us to talk about if Jane died, because we loved each other so much that we wanted to make sure we were okay. And all Jane wanted to make sure was that I was going to be okay, because she knew, which was proven, after she died, that I wasn't going to handle it very well. And I didn't. I did all the stupid things. You name it, I did the dumb, silly things, right? And it wasn't until, I thought back to that moment, and I wrote, when I was writing it in the book, that the pivotal thing about love and commitment and being married to someone in sickness and health till death do you part is the recognition that talking about when they go is part of allowing the person that's going to die to get some relief and some comfort.
And giving them permission to do what they have to do.
That you'll be okay, or at least you'll fake it enough to be okay, right? And what was powerful about that was, so after Jane dies, it was a couple of months later, I met my now fiance, Minerva. And I just remembered back to that conversation. And the beautiful thing about Minerva going through all this, right? Because, like I'm this widower, broken. I mean, I'm broken, like in so many ways. And I was feeling guilty, a lot of guilt. Like, oh, man, like she's just died. And I'm like trying to find something, right? And Minerva told me something that I just sticks with me to this day. And it's just like the reason she's just so lovely. It was around this whole idea of like, she's like, Jarie, if you didn't love your dead wife, you would be weird. Something like that. And she's like, you have enough love in your heart for more than one person. Not at the same time, but more than one person, right?
But wasn't it also pivotal that Jane wanted you to be happy? And didn't that also come out in your conversation with Patty?
Yeah. Yeah. So the big thing about that was when we finally stopped yelling at each other was Patty made us recognize that I didn't want Jane to die because I loved her so much and I wanted to do everything I could. And that was okay. And Jane wanted to make sure that she knew that I knew that she loved me, that she wanted me to be happy. She wanted me to find love again and not to mope around like I would mope around.
But you didn't really hold on to that after Jane died until you met Minerva. And Minerva brought that home to you, right?
Yeah, that was bringing it full circle in a sense, right? Because I mean, you know what it's like. Your
I
partner
do.
dies and you're just sitting there going, what the hell do I do now?
Right.
Like
Who
I
am
have,
I without this person? I don't know who I am without this person.
or like, yeah, or like, how do I even process this? So having or being given the permission, or it's the best gift. I mean,
It,
a lot of people don't handle their end very well. And I must say that Jane really, she she handled the end with such grace and poise.
what a gift she left you with.
Oh
That was a
yeah,
beautiful gift she
every
left
day.
everyone with.
Yeah, she did.
Amazing.
She did. And
Amazing.
I
Let
always,
me, go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm every day trying to live up to be the man that I should be because of her and the good partner to
But the
Minerva.
thing that I perceive about you is that you're able to grow and you're able to evolve as information is coming in. So you are growing into that, or you are that man.
I hope
And
so.
I really would love you to explain to everyone because the title of your book is Ride or Die. Can you explain that ride or die concept, which Jane also taught you and left you with,
Yeah.
which is something that you carry through into your life now also. And
Yeah.
then I want to get to the male perspective on grief and loss.
Yeah. Sure. So ride or die, um, the modern definition of it is it's a hip hop term. Jane loved hip hop. And the modern hip hop definition is you are ride or die girl or woman to your man. So he goes in to the slammer or whatever, like I'm with you till the end. The origin of it is a bit mixed, but the original origin I found out is from Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh,
So
wow.
Bonnie wrote a poem about Bonnie and Clyde, and in the poem is like we're gonna ride or die till the end or something. So the original ride or die couple was Bonnie and Clyde, and that ended. They both got shot up, right? So her idea of ride or die was no matter how hard the struggle, no matter what is in the way, we are not going to leave each other's side until the end. And the commitment, again, like I think this is what your marriage vows mean, right? This is it. This is like, yeah, shit gets hard. Get out of your private pity party and make stuff happen. Yes, it's not fun. Yes, you're going to be frustrated. Yes, you're going to abuse yourself. Yes, you're not going to like each other for a while, but you made the commitment, and that's what it means. At least that's what it meant to us.
To
So,
you, so you made the commitment, you see it through,
yeah. And
right?
again, like circumstances are circumstances. There may be times where like as far as you can go is as far as you can go. Like, if you're not taking care of yourself and you have all these challenges, right? Especially when you're in the mix of caregiving, it's the struggle is getting out of your own head and then seeing the whole picture. Like how do I've committed to this person, how do I help them live their best life even when their best life may not be that
Is
long?
about to end. Let me ask
About
you,
to end.
what else? Because your book is wonderful, and
Thank you.
I really resonated with it. What else would you like everyone to know about it before I ask you about how the book helped you
Yeah.
to hone in on your male perspective about grief and loss, which is so different than it is for us girls?
Yeah. Well, I think what I want people to get out of the book, and I hope will get out of the book, is that if you have a man in your life that you love that is going through something like this or has gone through something like this, that you read it and you understand a little bit of the male perspective and what's going on in their head. And if you're a man going through this, that you read it and you're like, I don't feel so alone. Because one of the things I felt, even though I was with a lot of people around me, a lot of people that loved me, a lot of people I still connect with today that are still on Team Jane till the end. I still felt extremely alone because I personally, my take on it was it's my job to make this better. Like ultimately, it's my responsibility. I'm the captain of Team Jane. The most important thing is for me to save the MVP. And if I can't do that, like I don't know what else to do. And In one sense,
In your mind, did that make you a failure if you couldn't turn it completely around?
yeah, to a certain degree. I mean, I felt, I wouldn't say I felt responsible. Like I didn't give her leukemia, but I would second guess. There's times I'd second guess how we should have done things. And ultimately, it was the family. We all made decisions together, but I'm the spear. I'm the tip of the spear. I'm with her every day. I'm the one that knows. And it was a letdown. I mean, the sorrow of losing someone you love is horrible, but like you
But
also feel
watching her
just,
suffer and watching her go through all that, so
yeah,
hard. So
yeah,
so this leads me to this other question, because I love that you talk in your book about building up resilience to difficult times before they happen.
yeah.
So, which obviously you did in a way through your childhood and the things that you learned how to cope. But what are your suggestions for consciously building resilience? You talk about that in the book too.
Yeah. Well, my whole philosophy is you never rise to the occasion, you fall to your training. Full stop. So when you're under stress and strain and tired and exhausted, you're never your best self. You're always going to go down to the least common denominator, which happens to be what you've trained on. What do I mean by what you trained on? If you're used to drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, vaping, drinking alcohol when you're stressed, when you're really stressed, you are not even going to think twice about doing that. So for me, it's about building those healthy habits ahead of when you need them. And that means training. Now, you may say, well, how can you train for like your wife getting leukemia? Well, you can't, but you can push yourself out of your comfort zone. You can do physical activity. You can push your intellectual um, and stimulate your intellectual side of you so that when this inundation of things come at you, you're better able to prioritize and execute what matters. A lot of what got me through it was my endurance training. I was an Ironman. I did all these crazy endurance events. And the attitude was one foot in front of the other, just make it to the next pole, one more step, you know, get out of your private pity party. It could always be worse, right? Like all these things that just go on in your head. You're like, because when you push yourself to the absolute limit of physical exhaustion, that's where you meet yourself. You meet yourself in the worst times. You hardly ever meet yourself, your true self, in good times. It's when you are depleted and drained and exhausted, and every filter is just off, and you're just like, I do not know what to do. That is when the growth happens, and you need to practice that as
It's sort of
best
a
you can.
mindset.
Yeah.
It's like when you're talking about resilience and all of that, it's a mindset. I can remember because I can relate to it when they pulled me out of the car and I
Yeah.
knew Saul was dead next to me. I thought to myself, I will get through this somehow because I have to teach my son that you can get hit by a grenade in life and still keep going.
Yeah.
That was how I mindseted it.
Okay.
Jarie, could you explain why you say that healing never ends and why should it be thought of as a way of life rather than as an end state? Well, you're singing to the choir. So that's something that you learned in your life because you were constantly healing.
Yeah.
Where other people get to a point and they say, now I'm going to work on my stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like people always say, when are you going to move on from the loss? And I don't think you ever move on. I think you move through and you continue to carry that throughout time. And so if you think there's an end point, that's a fallacy because what'll happen is you just continue to carry this along. Now, over time, at least I've found, over time it dissipates. So the sorrow, the loss, you start to grow, but you always have this sort of tail that just is always with you because it makes up who you are. So your attitude, your how you deal with the world is this to some parts of all these experiences. So you just never end in the healing journey. I think you just get better at it every day. And when you have, I feel, the attitude of, I just every day I'm trying to get a little better, this is never going to end, then you don't have to worry, where am I? Am I better? Am I done? Can I get through this? It's like, no, you just keep going because it never ends. And I think once you come to that conclusion, I think once you synthesize that into something, you just become a lot more calm, just calmer. I'm like, okay, well, this never ends. Just do the best you can. Every day's a gift. Wake up, no matter how shitty the day is. Just at
Right. And
least I
keep
got
working
one more
on your
day.
stuff because eventually you unload it
Yeah,
and you unpack it
yeah,
and your life changes for the better.
yeah.
So I really also want to ask you, you talk about achieving happiness and joy through love, acceptance, compassion, and service. Could you talk to us about that?
Yeah, yeah. So, as I mentioned before, I tend to bias negative. I think it's just like,
It just really
hey,
changed you.
well, and engineers solve problems. There's no problem. There's nothing to do. So I struggle mightily to experience joy. Um, it's really hard for me because there's a lot of fear in the way of really experiencing joy. So
It's a
what
way of
I,
giving yourself permission, though, isn't it? To allow
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. I mean, I it's hard. It's just hard sometimes to appreciate what you have, right? Especially when you've come from an environment and growing up where everything is like, I just need to get to the next thing, right? So what I've found for me personally is instead of me like getting to the next thing, I feel better helping people get to their next thing. And being of service to me, it 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 separates my ego, my thing from who I am. So I can help someone and not feel as invested in it if it was my own stuff, right? And that just makes me feel way more calm. Like, oh, you need help? Sure, not a problem. But when it comes to me, it's harder because I've a vested interest in, oh, if I fail, oh gosh, like what's going on? So I would say that also being of service puts it's there's just a shared humanity, and one of the things that I'm really thankful for is having shared humanity with people. Like it doesn't matter who you are, death of a loved one is going to hit you no matter who you are. I don't care. You
Absolutely.
name every demographic, it doesn't matter. And our shared humanity in that is that we're humans trying to get through it, and we can find comfort and we can find solidarity in the struggle,
Well,
right?
now as a grief coach, do most people reach out to you who have had losses, death?
It's so yeah, the grief coach stuff with Emma. It's more like I would provide like text messages to people so that they would feel a little less lonely and like, hey, walk through this. And a lot of those text messages are really meant to break the frame. So I'm in my own private pity party. I'm feeling bad about myself. My wife died, my whatever, my partner, my kid, whatever, whoever it is, and I'm feeling really shitty. And the idea is to break the frame. So like, yes, it's bad, but what about this? And so when you can break the frame from like the negative and you can disjoint it, then you have the opportunity to like get the thing in that you need to get in. And it takes time, right? There's no
Yeah,
silver bullet on it.
but between your book and what you're doing, you're helping so many people. That's wonderful.
Well, thank you. I hope
Really,
so.
truly, Jerry.
I hope so.
You and Jane received such very wise guidance from your social worker, Patty, and I wish to share this meaningful quote from your memoir, Ride or Die. with our Grief and Rebirth podcast audience. The way you handle this part of your life will help Jane as well. If she knows that you will be okay, that will make her happy and bring her peace. Do you see how this works? I know it is hard to grasp, but accepting whatever is going to happen and talking about it, planning it, living in the moment, being happy, being sad will truly make it better. Jane looked me in the eye. I had gotten up and moved beside her bed while Patty was talking. I was holding her hand. She squeezed it tight. I want you to be happy because you make me so happy. Jane's tears were impossible for her to stop now. Ride or die, remember? Even if I die, I'm still on the ride with you, always. Jarie, thank you so much from my heart for this inspiring, wise, and touching interview. And I'm sure our Grief and Rebirth podcast audience joins Jane and me in wishing you much happiness for the rest of your ride. And
Thank you.
You're welcome, from my heart. And here is a loving reminder, everyone, that you can see the show notes and all Grief and Rebirth podcast episodes at ireneweinberg.com. And make sure to follow us and like us on social at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Jarie, would you like to say something else? Because I can see you're really touched and you're having an emotion or a feeling. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just thank you so much for allowing me to tell Jane and I's story and to sort of share, what I went through, and hopefully people out there will realize that, there's joy in life. You can go through tragedy and struggle and feel like the world's collapsing in on you, but you just keep on going. Eventually, you hope that you'll get out on the other side, but I hope you don't feel so alone in the struggle if you're going through what I went through and Jane and I went through, and that you can find solidarity and find peace.
I think that's a beautiful message. What a gift you're giving people. You're actually paying it forward from your experience.
Yeah.
You're helping
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
Which is just beautiful. So, as I like to say, to be continued. Thank you so much, Jarie. Many blessings.
Thank you.
And bye for now. And everyone, enjoy your holiday season, everything that is going on in your lives. And from Jarie and me, bye for now.
Bye for now.